sister Sophia was supposed to die that day in the mountains of Afghanistan, but instead, she made a shot that defied every law of physics and military protocol anyone had ever seen. Before we dive in, tell us where in the world are you watching from? If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow's episode is truly mind-blowing. Let's get started. I'm Devin Kellerman, and I need you to understand something about my little sister. When we were kids growing up in Montana, I taught her how to shoot our father's hunting rifle. She was 12, barely tall enough to shoulder the weapon properly, but she had this incredible focus that made me uncomfortable. While other kids got distracted by butterflies or complained about the cold, Sophia would lie in the dirt for hours, waiting for the perfect shot at a tin can 300 yards away. But teaching someone to hit targets on a lazy Sunday afternoon and trusting them to save lives in a war zone are two completely different things. I spent 4 years as a Marine in Iraq before an IED took me out of the fight permanently. I knew what combat could do to even the toughest soldiers. And honestly, I never thought my quiet, 24-year-old sister had what it took to handle that kind of pressure. Sophia Kellerman was different from other snipers in her unit. She didn't talk much, didn't brag about her scores at the range, didn't try to prove herself with loud stories or aggressive behavior. She just showed up, did her job with methodical precision, and went back to reading whatever paperback novel she'd brought from home. Her fellow soldiers respected her technical skills but wondered if she had the killer instinct when it really mattered. The day I'm about to tell you about took place on a mountain peak in Kunar province, where my sister found herself 2,200 meters away from an impossible target. To put that distance in perspective, that's more than 20 football fields away, with mountain winds gusting at unpredictable speeds, and environmental factors that would challenge the world's most experienced military snipers. The shot she was about to attempt had never been successfully made in combat conditions. What happened next didn't just save her entire unit from certain death. It changed how everyone in that valley viewed what was possible when training, determination, and pure necessity collide in the worst possible circumstances. This is the story of how my little sister proved that sometimes the people we're most worried about protecting are actually the ones protecting us. Sophia's journey to that mountain began 6 months earlier when she deployed to Forward Operating Base Zenith in Afghanistan's Kunar province. Our family has a military tradition going back 3 generations. Our father Garrett served 2 tours in Vietnam as a reconnaissance specialist, and he raised us with the understanding that serving your country wasn't just an honor, it was an obligation. When I got wounded by that IED in Fallujah and had to take a medical discharge, I felt like I'd failed the family legacy. Sophia stepping up to deploy felt like she was trying to carry that weight for both of us. The night before she left Montana, we sat on our father's porch, and she told me something I'll never forget. Devin, I'm not going over there to prove anything to Dad or to you. I'm going because I'm good at what I do. And good soldiers save lives. Forward Operating Base Zenith sat in a valley surrounded by hostile territory, where Taliban fighters controlled the high ground and used it to their advantage daily. Sophia was assigned to a specialized reconnaissance unit, led by Sergeant Major Torres, a career soldier who ran his team with discipline and zero tolerance for mistakes. Her closest ally in the unit was Corporal Zane Mitchell, a 26-year-old from Georgia who served as her spotter. Zane had been deployed 3 times and had a reputation for keeping his snipers alive through the worst firefights. He and Sophia developed an almost telepathic communication during their training exercises, able to calculate wind speed, distance, and target movement without speaking. But not everyone welcomed her presence. Staff Sergeant Rick Hawthorne, a 32-year-old veteran sniper with 4 deployments under his belt, made no secret of his opinion that women didn't belong in combat roles. "I don't care what you did at Quantico or Fort Benning," Hawthorne told her during their first week. "When the shooting starts and you freeze up, you'll get real soldiers killed." Sophia never responded to his provocations directly. Instead, she focused on her job, consistently outperforming expectations during training exercises and earning quiet respect from most of the unit. She wrote letters home every few days, telling us about the landscape, the people, and her growing confidence in her abilities. What none of us knew was that her biggest test was only 3 weeks away. 3 weeks into October, intelligence reports indicated that a high-value Taliban commander known as the Ghost was planning to meet with local warlords at a compound 15 kilometers northeast of the base. This wasn't just any target. The Ghost had been responsible for coordinating attacks that killed dozens of coalition forces over the past year. Command decided to send Sophia's reconnaissance unit on a 3-day mission. Infiltrate, observe, and if the opportunity presented itself, eliminate the target. From the moment they left base, Hawthorne made Sophia's life miserable. He assigned her to carry the heaviest equipment, gave her the worst positions during rest stops, and questioned every tactical decision she made in front of the other soldiers. "Kellerman's going to get us all killed," he told Corporal Williams during the second night. "Mark my words, when the pressure hits, she'll fold like a house of cards." The team established their observation post on a hilltop overlooking the target compound. For 36 hours, they watched and waited, gathering intelligence on movement patterns and identifying potential targets. Sophia proved herself during this phase, spotting details that other team members missed and accurately calculating distances that Hawthorne had to verify with his own equipment. On the morning of day 3, everything went wrong. A local shepherd stumbled across their position and, despite their attempts to remain hidden, managed to escape before they could detain him. Within 2 hours, Taliban fighters began a coordinated assault on their hilltop position from 3 different directions. The attack was devastating and precise. Mortar rounds started falling around their position with deadly accuracy, while small arms fire pinned them down behind inadequate cover. During the initial barrage, Zane took shrapnel in his chest and leg, bleeding heavily and struggling to breathe. "I need immediate evacuation or I'm not going to make it," Zane gasped to the medic. The radio crackled with bad news. Command couldn't risk a helicopter extraction while the Taliban mortar team continued their assault from a mountain peak 2,200 meters away. The mortars had to be eliminated first, but the distance made it an impossible shot under combat conditions. Hawthorne looked directly at Sophia and said the words that would haunt both of them. "This is exactly why women don't belong here. Now Mitchell's going to die because we're stuck with someone who can't handle the pressure." Something changed in Sophia's face when Hawthorne said those words. The quiet, methodical soldier I'd known since childhood disappeared, replaced by someone with steel in her eyes and absolute certainty in her voice. "I'll take the shot," she said, reaching for the Barrett M82 50 caliber rifle. Hawthorne laughed bitterly. "Kellerman, that's 2,200 meters in mountain winds with a target you can barely see through the scope. Nobody makes that shot in combat conditions." "Then we all die here," Sophia replied. "Zane dies, you die, I die, and every soldier in this unit dies. So I'm taking the shot." Despite his wounds, Zane insisted on spotting for her one last time. Together they began the most critical calculations of their lives. The wind was gusting unpredictably between 15 and 25 miles per hour from the northwest. The temperature difference between their position and the target zone would affect bullet trajectory. They had to account for the curvature of the earth over that distance. "Elevation difference is 300 feet, Zane whispered, consulting his rangefinder with shaking hands. "Humidity is low, barometric pressure is dropping." For 45 minutes they worked through every variable. Sophia would need to aim 3 feet to the left and 2 feet above her actual target to compensate for all environmental factors. She had exactly 1 round left in the chamber. There would be no second chance. No opportunity to adjust based on where the first shot landed. My voice came through the radio at that moment. I'd been monitoring their emergency frequency from base, knowing something terrible was happening but unable to help. "Sophia, I know you can hear me. Remember what Dad taught us on those Sunday afternoons. Breathe, focus, and trust your training." "Copy that, big brother," she responded, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "Time to show them what a Kellerman can do." The other soldiers had gone completely silent, watching this 24-year-old woman prepare for a shot that would either save their lives or confirm their deaths. Even Hawthorne stopped talking, finally understanding that this might be their only hope of survival. Sophia settled into position, controlled her breathing, and placed her finger on the trigger. Time stopped. Sophia's breathing slowed to an almost meditative rhythm as she aligned the crosshairs exactly 3 feet left and 2 feet above the tiny figure she could barely make out through her scope. The Taliban mortar operator was no bigger than a pinhead at that distance, partially obscured by rock formations and constantly moving as he loaded another round. The mountain wind gusted against her face. She waited. Another gust. She waited again. For nearly 3 minutes she held that position, finger resting lightly on the trigger, waiting for the perfect moment when all variables aligned. Then it happened. The wind calmed for exactly 2 seconds. Sophia squeezed the trigger. The Barrett's massive .50 caliber round exploded from the barrel with a sound that echoed across the entire valley. For what felt like an eternity but lasted only 3.8 seconds, that bullet traveled through thin mountain air, fighting gravity, wind resistance, and physics itself across more than 20 football fields of hostile territory. Nobody breathed. Nobody moved. Even the Taliban fighters seemed to pause their assault, as if the entire battlefield understood that something extraordinary had just happened. Then the impossible occurred. Through the scope, Zain saw the Taliban mortar operator drop instantly. The mortar fire that had been raining death on their position for 2 hours stopped completely. The enemy position went silent. "Holy God," Hawthorne whispered, staring at Sophia in complete disbelief. "You actually did it." Within minutes, the rescue helicopter was inbound. The Taliban fighters, having lost their primary weapon, and seeing their mortar team eliminated by what seemed like divine intervention, began retreating from their positions. Zain was evacuated within the hour and survived his injuries. Completely. Later investigation by military ballistics experts confirmed that Sophia had just made the longest verified combat kill in that theater of operations. The shot broke unofficial records and defied mathematical probability. Seasoned snipers with decades of experience called it tactically impossible but operationally perfect. When I heard about the shot over military communications, I broke down crying in my barracks room, not from fear or relief, but from overwhelming pride in my little sister who had just saved 8 soldiers' lives with one perfect moment of absolute precision. Hawthorne approached Sophia as the dust settled around their position and said 6 words that changed everything. "I was wrong about you. Kellerman, that shot changed everything, but not in the way you might expect." Sophia didn't become some kind of military celebrity or start bragging about her impossible achievement. Instead, she realized something profound about herself and what real strength actually means. 2 weeks later, during her R&R leave, I flew out to meet her at a base in Germany. We sat in a quiet cafe, and for the first time in our lives, I told my little sister that I was proud to be her brother, not the other way around. "Devin, I didn't make that shot to prove anything to Hawthorne or to you or even to myself," she said. "I made it because Zain was dying, and I was the only person in that valley who could save him. Everything else was just noise." Back in Afghanistan, her entire reconnaissance unit became fiercely protective of Sophia. Hawthorne personally requested that she be permanently assigned to his squad and spent the rest of his deployment telling anyone who would listen about the finest piece of marksmanship I've ever witnessed. The man who once questioned whether women belonged in combat became her most vocal advocate. Zain made a full recovery, and later told me that thinking about Sophia's impossible shot gave him something to fight for during the darkest moments of his medical treatment. "She didn't just save my life," he said. "She showed me what's possible when someone refuses to accept defeat." The successful elimination of the Ghost led to intelligence breakthroughs that resulted in capturing 3 other high-value targets, significantly disrupting Taliban operations throughout the region. But Sophia's proudest moment came 6 months later when she received a letter from a young woman in Texas who was considering enlisting. Sophia wrote back, "They'll question everything about you until the moment you prove them wrong. But the only person whose doubt really matters is your own." I keep a photo of Sophia from that deployment on my desk, not because of the famous shot, but because it reminds me that sometimes the people we're most protective of are actually protecting us. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible true stories of courage and determination. Your support helps us share these important stories with the world.